/b/ A few years ago, I posted on /x/ that I would go into the wilderness near my home, in NM, and try to find then kill /rape /befriend a goatman or skinwalker or whatever the fuck you wanna call them. What ensued was a 2-year journey in the middle of fucking nowhere and living nightmares hidden anywhere and everywhere. Well, I found it. I've been home for about 2 months now. My family thought I was dead and had since moved from their old house to escape the memories of me. They didn't believe me when I called them for the first time. Luckily, they gladly agreed to let me stay with them until I could get back on my feet. I recently remembered posting on 4chan before going on that terrible trek, but I decided not enough people would see it on /x/. I went into the wilderness on an old trail with 2 friends of mine, let's call them Marv and Derek. Marv's dad is Native American and told him the location of an old campground when he was little, not sacred or anything. Marv had hiked up near there with his dad and said it always felt weird. We all read creepypasta about the infamous Goatman, and we figured that could be a good place to start. We brought backpacks full of camping gear and headed up on our trek. About halfway through, start to notice there are no birds chirping. WTF.jpg. Decide not to say anything. Sorry guys. Fuck green text. I can't explain it well enough like this. About an hour later. We're all too tired to speak. Marv is just staring at the ground in front of him as he walks. Which I thought was a bit odd. But I didn't say anything. Marv is slightly ahead of Derek and I. Derek starts to complain about how tired he is. But Marv just shushes him, which is really fucking weird. Marv is a pretty quiet laid-back guy. Derek doesn't question it. And I just reasoned he didn't want to hear Derek complain. He heard a stream nearby. Oh thank God, Derek said. I'm out of water. We started walking in the direction of the sound until we came to a stream. Derek takes a filter from his backpack and starts filtering water into his bottle. When he's done, I borrow his and do the same. But Marv just wants to get the fuck out of there and get to the camp. Saying there's a lake there or something. When we had finished, Marv insisted we walk on the trail until we get there. It's starting to get dark. And Marv is trying to get us to walk faster and Derek keeps complaining. I know something's up. I start nervously joking about finding the Goatman, or him finding us, and Marv just said, "Can we please stop talking until we get there?" I think Marv's been a dick since we got up here. What's up? We follow the stream directly to the lake's shore and immediately we see basically just patches of dirt where a camp used to be. Maybe some carved wooden pieces. There's no grass where the huts used to be. We decide to set up camp and get firewood before the sun goes all the way down, because in the creepypastas that's always when someone gets taken. Of course. Being the idiot fuckhead teenagers that we were, we didn't think to bring any weapons. Just flashlights, camping gear, and a fishing pole, Marv's, in case we found a fishing spot, e.g. the campground. We pitched our tents and lit a fire. Everything seemed to be set up right as the sun finally completely went away. It wasn't too dark because of the stars and the fire. But the forest around us might as well have been pitch black. We couldn't see anything. I asked when we were gonna go goatman hunting and Marv just gave me this look like we're not. We start walking on the edge of the lake. Going around it. We see on the other side there's another stream. This time traveling away from the lake. We decide it would be smart to follow that so we can find our way back. About 20 minutes downstream, we hear this terrible screech from behind us that sounds like a little girl screaming over a dying, suffering horse. Have you ever heard a horse in pain? YouTube that shit. It's terrifying. We decide it would be best if we kept walking at a brusque pace. And Marv is just saying over and over again, "This was a mistake. This was a mistake," quietly to himself. Derek finally yells for him to shut the fuck up. But he just keeps rambling, kind of shaking as he does it. Finally, Derek gets fed up and slaps the fucker right out of his trance. And he just says we need to get off this mountain. Now. Derek goes on about how we came to find the Goatman and the Goatman we shall find. But I'm not too sure. Honestly. Marv is making me wanna shit myself and the fucking screeches aren't helping. We hear off in the distance that chuckle-like sound coyotes make, not the heavy laugh like hyenas. Marv and Derek don't even seem to care. So I think fuck it. Let's keep going. We see that the stream turns into a small river ahead. And we hear this heavy shush sound coming from just a little bit ahead. The current is heavy at this point, so I reason there's a waterfall ahead. Turns out, the creek/river lead to some cliff. It didn't sound exactly like a person and a horse. That was just the best comparison I could think of. Derek is a bit disappointed the stream ended here. We'd probably get lost if we walked too far away from it. And we hadn't found anything along its banks. He said he had to take a piss. But if I know Derek, he was going to let off some steam. Walking in circles is usually how he deals with frustration or stress. Marv tries to stop him and suggests going with him, but Derek says he's a big boy and can go potty by himself. I laughed. But Marvin's face remained nervous. So Marv and I just sit on the rocks, waiting for Derek to come back. We don't talk. But Marv is shining his flashlight in every damn direction, as if he's watching out for something. Find the Goatman yet? I joke. None of us actually believed the stories. Not until we had gone too far. He didn't respond. Or even acknowledge me. We waited for 10, 20, 30 minutes. I started to get a bit jumpy, but I figured Derek was either playing a joke on us or still letting off steam. He's done it for up to an hour before. I start trying to converse with Marv, but he ignores me. Why have you been such an asshole all day, man? Seriously. What's got you freaking the fuck out? There's something out there, he says. His eyes bloodshot and watery. I remember those words better than any I've ever heard. The way he said it fucking horrified me, not a coyote. Worse. Much worse. He looked like he was about to cry. We just sat there in complete, terrifying silence for what seemed like hours before Derek finally came back. The sudden return of Derek snapped me out of a terrified trance and I caught a light whiff of this weird smell. But it went away quickly. Where the fuck were you, man? Let's get the fuck out of here. I say. Isn't it peaceful here, though? We should stay a while. Derek says. Marv's about to piss his pants and I'm exhausted from hiking all day. We should go. No. He says in a voice slightly deeper than normal. Then his voice became normal again. I just wanna admire nature a bit. You guys should stay with me. Marv at this point was on the brink of bursting into tears. He bit his lip and his jaw was quivering. And his face had turned slightly red. He was shaking and sweating a bit. I told Derek no and that maybe we'd come back the next day. Marv was just eyeing Derek like he was a fucking ghost. Derek finally agreed to walk back to camp. Marv made sure he was behind Derek at all times. But Derek just walked so slow. Trying to linger in that spot, or linger behind. We barely moved at all since both my idiot friends walked so slowly behind. I looked into the black, flowing river and just thought how ominous it was since it was reflecting the dark night sky instead of the blue day sky. I started trying to lighten the mood by saying that there was just no way we would have found the Goatman on the first night. I told them we'd go back to camp, I'd make a delicious fucking meal with the dried food we brought. And tomorrow we'd catch fish for breakfast before continuing the hunt. No. Marv said. He refused to continue looking for the Goatman and kept going on about how we needed to leave the mountain the next day. Derek suddenly realized his phone was no longer in his pocket. He said he remembered having it when he took a piss, and that it must be back at the cliff. Marv didn't want to go back. He kept saying that they'd get it in the morning, but Derek argued that an animal might get to it, or that it could rain. That's when I realized, when the fuck would he have put it down in the first place? He said it must have fallen out of his pocket, but he said he somehow knew it was back there. Marv said he'd just meet us back at camp because he didn't want to go back to that place. At first I thought he was referring to the 10-minute walk, which I argued wasn't that long, but he said that when he came here with his dad had always instructed him not to leave the campsite during the night. He figured, until now, that his dad just didn't want him to get lost or taken by a coyote, but he said sensed something was hunting them. Something bigger than a coyote. I figured, shit, he probably means a bobcat. You afraid of the Goatman? I said mockingly. We won't find it on the first night. Don't be so sure, he responded. Marv just continued back to the campsite alone, and Derek and I walked back downstream to get his phone. Derek doesn't talk the entire way. I just keep telling myself, in my head, that creepypasta are fake. We finally get back to the rushing water near Derek's phone when Derek starts walking a bit slow. I don't really think anything of it, since I'm focused on the trees and I had no reason to suspect anything was strange. But, when I turned around, Derek was gone. Suddenly, that strange smell wafted across my nose again, but stronger this time. Normally on copy pastas people say it smells like copper. It doesn't. If you've ever licked one of your cuts or scrapes, it smelled like what blood tastes like. At first, I think an animal has gotten Derek and that's where the smell is coming from, but I heard that terrifying screech again. This time, it was very close and with ear-splitting volume. The smell and sound combination. Then, everything's quiet. There's no sound. No crickets, no wind, no screech, just that smell. That putrid, pungent smell. And then I just blacked out. I didn't remember anything between that and waking up at the base of the waterfall. It wasn't a huge cliff, and the waterfall flattened out at certain sections. I was heavily scraped up and covered in red spots, which would become bruises, and bruises. I tried to stand, but when I put pressure on my arm to push myself up, it hurt like a bitch. I couldn't move it without pain, and I figured it was broken. I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen and behind my head, so I placed my hand on the back of my hand and looked at it. It was covered in blood. I lifted up my shirt and my stomach had 4 bloody marks on them, but not from sharp claws. They were scratch marks, almost like they were from a human with exceptionally long nails. Before I even thought about my friends, I wondered where the fuck I was and how I would get home. Then I heard this heavy grunt, almost like a growl. I just laid there, absolutely terrified, as a 7-foot beast on hind legs, described in second post, had 2 deer, a buck, and a doe, hanging limp over each of the creature's shoulders. It stared at me with its yellow eyes for a brief moment, and then it seemed to almost smile as it slowly walked away. I vomited and fucking fainted again. A while later, I woke up in the same place and just sat there all day, injured in the middle of the fucking wilderness. If coyotes had found me, I would have been fucked. What seemed like days later, although it was really just hours, Marv, his dad, and a few of his dad's Native American friends sat around me. I was in the back seat of his dad's Jeep, on the way to the fucking hospital after they had gone searching for me rather than calling the fucking police or rangers or something. I told them what I saw and they said it was a dream or a hallucination, but it was suspicious how hard they pushed it. Eventually, we got to the ER, my parents were contacted, and I was okay, but I was intrigued. If this thing wanted me dead, it could have killed me. I needed to go back. 2 months later, after my arm had recovered and I had done a shit ton of research on skinwalkers, Goatman, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Wendigo, and whatever else the fuck that thing could have been, I packed up another bag and was ready to hunt the fucking thing again, but that's a different story. We had 2 knives, although they weren't really gonna help against an animal. Derek had apparently never come back to camp that night. Marv freaked out when neither of us came back and immediately left to get his dad sprinting through the forest as fast as he could. He fell part of the way apparently. So Marv is reluctant at first, but agrees to come with me on account of him wanting some fucking revenge for whatever the fuck it was taking Derek. I told him that's not why I was going, and he understood that. But he brought his dad's rifle just in case. He told his dad we were going hunting for coyotes in some other area. I brought my grandpa's handgun, a 1911. Since it was the only gun I could get my hands on and I by no means wanted to be without protection again. So we drove to the edge of the place and started hiking up the mountain very early in the day. We wanted to be set up by sundown. We reached the campsite again and set up our campsite. Of course, gathering ample firewood to last the night. We were playing poker, using rocks as chips, when we heard that terrifying girl/horse scream again. Marv dropped his cards, grabbed his rifle, and hugged it against his chest. My grandfather's 1911, which he got in Korea, was in a holster on my waist. I didn't grab it immediately because as terrifying as the sound was, the creature hadn't harmed me as far as I knew. So I had no intention of harming it. To lighten the mood, I had brought portable speakers and my iPod, to keep my phone from dying. I turned on a playlist with the most random mix, everything from Dirty Art Club to the Vogues. Marv eventually settled down and we resumed playing poker. We played a few rounds when the song Turn Around and Look at Me by the Vogues started playing, and it was a bit unsettling given that we were in the woods looking for a creature that killed our friend. I grabbed my iPod and looked for a song to change it to. Hey guys! I jumped like a frightened cat and Marv scrambled for his gun. It was Derek. Fucking Derek. I stood up slowly. Derek, where the fuck have you been? What do you mean, asshole? He asked me. You guys disappeared when I went to blow off some steam and I had to walk all the way back in these creepy ass woods by myself. Monty and I looked at each other, then back to Derek. We tried explaining to him that we had been there and seen him come back from his piss, or blowing off steam, whichever was true. We told him it had been 2 months since he disappeared and he thought we were joking. He thought we were trying to pull a prank on him or some shit. He kept talking about how we weren't getting to him and how we should just stop before he saw the looks we were giving him. Neither of us were good actors, and we were dead serious. Derek didn't talk for 10 minutes after that. At this point, I was debating in my head whether this was fucking Derek or something else. I thought about asking questions only he would know, but I just decided to accept that my friend was found. At least, for now. We started joking about alien abduction, sex traffickers, and all the other seemingly rational explanations. Derek and Marv wanted to go home in the morning and never come back to this place again. But I told them I was staying. They were puzzled. But Derek said he'd to stay. I told him fuck no, not after last time. He didn't argue much. That night, none of us could sleep over the constant wailing of the thing lurking in the surrounding wilderness. In the morning they both left. But Marv insisted I keep his gun. So I'm sitting in the camp. Cell phone off to conserve battery. Playing solitaire. Not much happened that day, but as soon as the sun was 3/4 done with its cycle, I hung my food in a tree, picked up the rifle, just in case, and my flashlight, and started following that stream again. I started calling out hello, trying to find who the fuck knows what. JR? Nothing. I found nothing that night, or the next night, or even the night after that. I heard no screeches, no howls, nothing. Even stranger, it seemed as if the birds and crickets had returned. Every night, I sat on a rock by that waterfall for hours, wondering if I would ever see that thing again. A week after Derek and Marv left, I went to the base of the mountain and called Marv. I asked him to bring more dried food and TP and some iodine in case I didn't feel like filtering. When Marv came back, he said he was staying with me. First trip was summer after graduating HS. I just didn't show up to college. I thought, awesome. But unexpected after he nearly shat himself the last 2 times. He said Derek had been acting strange since he got home, and hasn't spoken to Marv since. Marv said he was hungry, so I offered him some trail mix, which he brought. He refused it and instead said he wanted meat. I told him the meat was for dinner, but he could fish for something. He grabbed the fishing pole and held it in a way I've never seen anyone hold a rod in that manner before, but I don't fish. He held it so strangely, like he had no idea what he was doing. And he just dipped the hook in the water like he had never done it before. He kind of pulled it up a bit and let it sink again, as if he were trying to attract a fish. There's no way he could have caught a fish doing what he was doing. No fish is that stupid. I shrugged and started reading. If he was gonna fish, what was I supposed to do? A few minutes later, I heard a sudden splash. I looked up and he had a fish in his hands. It was wiggling as I watched him bite the fucking thing's neck like an animal. What the fuck? I yell out and he realizes what he's fucking doing. I caught one, he said. He was drenched. Even his pants. It was almost like he fucking jumped in after it. I dismissed it as an act of frustration and watched him reluctantly walk over to the fire pit, which had no fire but was surrounded by rocks and wood we had placed to sit on. How the fuck do you think? He fucking lit one like an intelligent human being. With the shit I had experienced, I didn't know what to fucking think anymore. I grabbed the 1911 and leaped out of my tent. Marl's tent was wide open, and he wasn't there. The screeching entranced me. It sounded terrifying and made me jump every time it let out that horrible shriek, but I had to find this thing. I had to. Maybe it had Marv and I needed to save him. Maybe it was just as curious about me as I was about it. I started walking toward the sound, gun in hand. I was shaking, but my feet kept moving, almost autonomously. I felt like I had no control, like I had to find this thing even if it meant my death. As I got closer, the terrible blood smell resurfaced, strong as ever, and the screeching stopped. When I got to the area the screams came from, I saw Marvin walking further ahead in the trees. I could barely see him and his back was facing me. He was nude, at least the parts I could see, and far ahead of me. He stopped and slowly began turning his head. Immediately, I was filled with fear and hid behind a tree. I stood there for seemingly forever before finally gathering the courage to follow my friend. I continued walking after him, but I could not see him. "Jack," he said from behind me. I froze. Goosebumps dotted my arms and every hair on my body stood up. I turned around and saw Marvin, fully clothed, standing across from me. He waved his finger in a follow-me motion, and I did. He continuously disappeared, reappeared, and waited for me to catch up before walking ahead and disappearing again. Finally, when he had led me to the middle of fucking nowhere, he just disappeared completely. I slowly drew my gun and felt my eyes start to tear up. The frigid cold was almost painful against my face. "Marv!" I called out. "Marvin, where the fuck did you go?" I screamed. "Jack," it said. This wasn't Marv's voice, nor was it human. My hands started shaking and I started weeping. "What are you?" I screamed, terrified. "Jack," it said again. The voice sounded like an animal trying to imitate a human voice. I could not see the creature, nor could I find the source of the sound, but it definitely was not Marv. Suddenly, I wasn't afraid. I put my gun away and fell to my knees. I wanted to show this thing I meant no harm. I wiped the tears from my face and put my head down. I just sat there for around 20 minutes as it spoke in some language I didn't understand. At least, I think it was a language. Come to think of it, could have been word-like sounds. I felt a hot, heavy breath on my neck, then it began sniffing me. I wasn't afraid, but I didn't dare move. "Jack," it repeated in my ear. I could feel the fur and muzzle lightly rubbing against my ear. Then, it slowly backed away and retreated into the darkness. I collapsed and stayed there for a few hours. I could hear the fucking screeching get farther and farther away. Eventually I just passed out and woke up in the same spot. There were these huge hoof prints trailing behind me in some mud, but the trail turned to dirt and I didn't have the balls to track the fucking thing. Not after that encounter. Cavemen knew how to light fires. If the thing could drive, I'm sure it could use a lighter. But I don't know the exact details, or even if Marv was the damn thing. Some weird shit just happened. Anyways, I became a real mountain man over the course of the next 2 years. My encounters were nowhere near as frequent as that, but I had some pretty amazing encounters with the thing. I'll continue tomorrow around the same time, as I need to get to bed and so do all of you. I'll use the same image as this thread.